Welcome to More Than a Broker, the podcast that goes beyond the traditional definition of a logistics provider. My name is Andrew Elsner, co-founder of Spot. In each episode, we will dive into the stories of industry experts, keep you up to date on the highs and lows of the logistics marketplace, and introduce you to the people behind the advanced technologies that are driving innovation for brokers, shippers, and carriers within our industry. Join us as we explore the world of logistics through a different lens. This is More Than a Broker.
Drivers, start your engine!
Welcome to the podcast. I'm Kreg Hunter, VP of Operations here at Spot, continuing the conversation on cargo theft and fraud in the industry. We recently talked about prevention strategies with Keith Lewis, VP of Operations at Verisk, and their CargoNet program. He uses his skill set and knowledge from the 3PL space and from law enforcement daily in his role as Vice President of Operations at CargoNet. We discuss how CargoNet helps businesses deter theft, recover stolen goods, and navigate the complexities of cargo security. So to kick things off here, welcome back, Keith. Appreciate you taking the time to speak with us again today. I'm joined today by Keith Lewis from CargoNet. And Keith, I know you were on our episode about a month ago, but if you could just start with kind of just a brief background of who you are and what CargoNet is.
Grew up in the logistics industry. My father owned a trucking company back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. I worked for him. After leaving, I worked for a couple of big warehousing companies, DSC Logistics, and a couple others. Went to Ryder Integrated Logistics, then on to Averitt Express, ran an operation in Graz, Austria. Then decided to go into law enforcement, speed through law enforcement. I wound up as a special agent with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, working on a cargo theft task force. I did that for about a dozen years. And then when I took a retirement, I came to work at Verisk, and CargoNet is our product. It's a Verisk solution. We collect data, supply chain disruptions, supply chain theft, any type of fraud, any type of an attack against the supply chain. We'll capture that data, we'll aggregate the data, and we'll provide it back to our customers in the form of reports, dots on the map, heat maps, and intelligence bulletins. We also work very hard and assist law enforcement with recoveries, which, it's hard to say but I'm going to say it. It's the more they steal, the more you can recover. And of late, we've had a lot of successes, especially in California and Kentucky, with a lot of recoveries on these fraudulent schemes that these bad actors are doing. Recovered probably since the beginning of the year, we probably recovered more than $30 million of stolen goods in California. And that's assisting law enforcement, nothing we did on our own. That's providing assistance and support and analytical investigations to law enforcement.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the pieces, CargoNet, trying to explain what it is, right? It's easy to just throw kind of hot words out there about theft prevention, et cetera. But really the pieces that you kind of touched on, right? It's the intelligence alerts, it's the weekly and monthly reporting. And then I think one of the most important things is having the capabilities to bridge the gap between shipper or broker, carrier, et cetera, and law enforcement across different locations across the U.S.
We provide the tips and best practices. But what's funny is a lot of people are afraid to talk to law enforcement. I get it. They can be kind of intimidating. And that's where we connect the dots. We talk to law enforcement every day, talk in the terms they understand. And they're very open to work with us. I wouldn't say they consider us, my analysts, law enforcement, but they treat us as we are as far as respect.
It's probably not a coincidence, right, that you've seen success rates in California and Kentucky, because it seems like those are obviously California has got two dedicated task force associated to CargoNet, and then Kentucky is starting down that path as well.
Kentucky's always had a task force. They're supported by the FBI. They're down to a couple of folks just working it, one investigator and one analyst. But again, it's the more they steal, the more you can recover. And Kentucky being the bourbon state, they have a lot of bourbon stolen in Kentucky. And I was just on the phone prior to this call with Kentucky State Police, and they had a couple of successes this morning. But you've got some other areas of the country. Miami is a hotspot, Chicago. And Western Arizona is becoming a hotspot as well.
So if you could frame it up, thinking as far as best practices, you mentioned that people are worried about reaching out to law enforcement or they're intimidated by it. But if you had a perfect scenario where CargoNet could get involved and help with the recovery, what are all those kind of check boxes that are there when somebody makes a report to CargoNet?
It's having all that information available. Truck number, truck VIN, trailer number, trailer VIN, driver information, product information, SKUs. If it's not serialized SKU numbers, a copy of the bill of lading would be helpful. And if it is serialized product, serial numbers. Law enforcement, if it's serialized product, it's very difficult to make a criminal case without confirming those serial numbers is stolen. So the devil's in the details, and having all that information readily available. I've got some customers that provide photos, stock photos of their trucks and trailers. So when we do send out that BOLO, we've got a picture of the truck and the trailer included in the BOLO. So the more information you can give us, the faster you can give it to us, creates a win-win for you, law enforcement, and for society as far as, keeping costs down to the consumer.
Yeah, I think those images are critical, right? It's knowing who the trucking company is that picked up the shipment, knowing what the product was, knowing how it was loaded, and like you said, trailer number, truck number, et cetera. So when you talk about sending out a BOLO, CargoNet will send a summary to its members, but do you send more detailed information out to law enforcement?
Yes, it's an unredacted. To our members, we send a redacted version that brand protects our customer and brand protects anybody that in their personal information on the driver or any of that information we may have. We're going to send a little more watered down version to the private sector. They're not going to need to know the driver's date of birth and driver's license number. It really doesn't matter to the private sector, but law enforcement is going to need as much information as they can get as quickly as they can get it. Because all you have is a truck number. I might see that truck as a law enforcement officer. I might see a trailer going down the highway, trailer number, whatever, 12. That doesn't mean it's a stolen trailer. It just means that the trailer number is 12. But if I have a license plate, then I can run on the back of the trailer following it, see that that trailer license plate is coming back to a stolen vehicle, or it's registered to a Wabash flatbed and it's attached to a refrigerated trailer. Now I've got probable cause to make that stop and further my investigation.
That makes sense. In my experience as working through this with different sides of the industry, the more information that you've got, the better for sure.
This is a team sport. The shippers have always been, the manufacturers have always been reluctant to pitch in and help out here. We're getting to that point where their costs are going to go up, where the industry cannot support this. And the costs are going to be passed on, which is ultimately passed on to the consumer. But we're all going to have to work on this together, to work as a team, to gather that driver information, take pictures of the truck, trailer, VIN numbers, and those type of things. It's a team sport.
I think that that's critical in this. I think there's a tendency to hold off on having that difficult conversation with a shipper from people that somebody might think they're sitting there with fingers crossed, thinking something might show up, et cetera. But in reality, if there's suspicion of it, the first step, confirming with the shipper, who's the company that picked this up, right? And then if you have a cross-country load that picks up on a Friday and it's supposed to deliver the following Friday, and you don't start looking into it until that load doesn't show up on Friday, you're way behind.
I always tell people, don't hope against hope that the truck's going to magically show up or it's going to be in an impound yard. The better communication we can have with everybody speeds up the process. I think the customer, we're always afraid to let the customer know that their load's stolen. But I think the customer would like to know as quickly as possible so they can start making arrangements. If that load is in fact stolen, their customer is going to be missing those products. They can make arrangements to expedite a shipment or manufacture some products or tap into the safety stock to get a plan of action in case the load doesn't deliver. If you've been in this business since breakfast on the transportation side, you know that something's not right. You know really quick that something's not right. The driver's going to check calling. You're tracking them on one of the tracking devices, whether it's cellular or GPS. The truck's not moving. The device is disconnected. You call the driver's phone number and it's a text-to-talk number, or it's dead. The phone's dead, and you go on, FMCSA, and now the insurance is lapsed or canceled. Those are all key indicators that there's a problem. And the sooner we can communicate with everybody, the better it is for you, the customer, and the customer's customer. And we always forget about the customer's customer when the goods are stolen. But there's somebody on the other line that's also a victim. They're going to have downtime, production time. The goods aren't on the shelf to sell, loss of revenue. So there's a lot of spokes on the wheel.
I think the best way to summarize that is your communication early and often, right? If you, like you said, if something seems off, start at least gathering that information out of the gate, and then that'll further solidify it. Let's say that the driver's not answering any check calls and they've turned their tracking off. That's almost an immediate call to the customer to confirm the information that they recorded when the truck checked in. Along those lines, you think that these bad actors are like getting wise to different locations and the shipping practices of some of these facilities and specifically targeting these, or are they just getting lucky and getting a load and then going and seeing what it is and deciding what to do with it?
So if you look at pilferages, what I deal with a lot here in Western Arizona, they're following the trailer to the truck stop when they cross over the state because they can buy fuel cheaper in Arizona. So those are targeted load. If you go to a truck stop and take a police report as a police officer, you have 10 trailers broken into and a few items are taken off a few. That's not a sophisticated crew. But if you go as a law enforcement officer, you go to the truck stop and one trailer's broken into and there's 200 cases stolen off the back. That's not getting lucky. And then on the full truckload side, so let's say you want to steal a load of copper and you're looking at Carrollton, Georgia, and there's only one manufacturing plant in Carrollton, Georgia. And there's about 200 loads a day posted on the internet from Carrollton, Georgia to specific places, El Paso, Connecticut. And those are copper loads. So you have to remember that these bad guys didn't start off as bad guys. They started off as good guys. Today, they can be a good guy and tomorrow they can be a bad guy. They can steal a load and bring it back to the home terminal or take it somewhere else in the United States to offload and sell. And they may pick up a legitimate backhaul that's not worth stealing and bring it back and deliver it for revenue purposes, because they're going to have to show some type of revenue and some type of commerce if they get audited or to finance equipment. They're going to have to show some legitimate revenue to pay bills. Otherwise, they're going to have some IRS issues. How are they going to launder all the stolen cash? They're doing legitimate business, and that's how they learn. If you're shipping out of an electronics facility in San Bernardino, California, and you're going there every day to pick up, or your trucks are going there every day to pick up high-end electronics to go to the East Coast, well, you know that the only thing coming out of there are high-end electronics. The case I'm talking about with Kentucky State Police, they messed up. They picked up 2 loads of bourbon, and both loads were like strawberry daiquiri mix. So they struck out there, right? They struck out. But most of the time, they're very successful.
So did they follow through with the theft when they struck out, or did they end up delivering?
This is just fresh this morning. So we'll see if the product's recovered. So we're hoping that the product's recovered. They just realize that they have something that's not worth a lot. It's worth a lot. It's got a street value. It's got a retail value. But you got to remember, they're stealing what people are buying. If people want it and they're willing to pay for it, that's what they're going to steal. You're not going to sell that type of product on the internet or ship it overseas. It's not worth it. The juice isn't worth the squeeze on that.
That leads us into probably some of the most commonly targeted commodities. What are you seeing from your side?
Well, I'll kind of take you down the list of what we've been dealing with this last year and a half. Virtual reality headsets, flat screen TVs, energy drinks, and solar panels. And every one of those that I just mentioned is in really, really high demand right now. So that's why they're focusing on those specific targets. And one of the bad things with the electronics is, I don't know how deep in the weeds you want to get, but they're using deception, altered bill ladings, and the sloppy business practices that our industry has, where we have a delayed reconciliation of goods not delivered. And some of these victims are finding out 6, 9 months later that of the 30 pallets that was shipped, 1 pallet delivered. And they're not just hitting them for 1 load here, 1 load there. There's some of these companies that are reporting to me, well, we just found out we're a victim of 30 thefts. We just found out we're a victim of 50 or 60. And we're talking upwards of $1 million a load on these virtual reality headsets. The other commodities I mentioned, a little different. It's kind of the microphone drop, right, of what we're dealing with that happened 6 months ago.
Yeah, and then it might be discovered on one, which causes an audit for everything for the past however many months. And then it's discovered, like you mentioned, now there's not just 1 load, there's 30, 40, 50 loads that have had the issue.
Or it's a PO. So it's a PO for, say, 1,000 pallets of product. Well, the way the system works now, the supply chain, we blow on whatever we have made on the trailer. If we have 10 pallets or we have 30 pallets, we put it on the trailer, we get it to market because we want to sell it. So the consignee's used to getting 1 to 10 pallets, maybe a half a truckload or a full truckload. So it's not raising any red flags. So the bad guys have figured this out. So they'll deliver 1 pallet and then When the PO is closed out, then they realize that they're 200 pallets short.
What do people involved in the supply chain need to be on the lookout for to notice this while it's happening, or also more closer to real time versus this 6 months down the road?
It's a two-part answer. One is prevention. Let's focus on prevention. The things I talked about earlier, getting the shippers involved. Pictures. Truck, trailer, driver's license of the driver, a photograph of the driver, in, out, gate pictures, those type of things, which will deter the bad guys because nobody wants their picture taken. In my day, we had a product called Regiscope. When I worked for DSC, we warehouse cigarette products. We laid the driver's license on a board, this device. This is going back to the 80s, where technology we had then. We captured that in a driver fingerprint and the driver's picture all at the same time and attached it through our WMS to the bill of lading with cigarette products. So we never had those type of problems. What the bad guys are doing is they're taking advantage of the speed and efficiency that the supply chain's moving at. And the faster we move it, always remember, the faster we move it, the faster they can steal it. So again, it's the prevention. It's looking out for, it's educating the driver when he shows up for pickup. Hey, this is not a blind shipment. If somebody's telling you it's a blind shipment, they're sending you down the wrong road. You're probably going to be a party to a theft. Does the truck number, the truck name, does everything the driver match up with the logistics provider gave the shipper? Again, the shippers are going to have to get involved in this and help out. They've got to carry some of the load. So it's the little things. The devil's in the details. There's not one silver bullet. There's not one significant thing that we can do. It's doing a lot of little things right. We say in firearms, we say practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And we've got to be perfect every day.
Just the topic of the speed and the efficiency and that's present in the industry right now, right? Like you can very easily get, if you're a shipper or broker or customer, et cetera, anybody that's involved in the carrier as well, you can very easily get used to the status quo, et cetera, right? All right, hey, we've used the same broker for 3 years. Their guys are always here. We've never had an issue, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, some of those other procedures start to break down. They don't record the driver's license. They don't take the pictures of the truck. They miss it on a couple of loads. Nothing happens. And then all of a sudden they stop doing it altogether until something very large happens and goes missing. And then it's a hard lesson.
So if you look at, I shipped 100 loads and one was stolen. So I'm doing pretty good. I'm at 99%. But that 1% could be $1 million load. And I always say this all the time. It doesn't matter how fast you're going. All it matters is you're on the wrong road. And the faster we go, the faster they can steal.
I do think that one other piece on this, for if you look at it from a shipping standpoint or from a logistics provider standpoint, you mentioned the communication with the shipping facility. It's a two-way street, right? Let's just use the example of a broker in the mix. The broker provides to the shipping facility the truck information, what should be on the side of the truck, the driver's name, the driver's phone number, driver's license picture. Shipper verifies everything is correct. I think also once the shipper records all that stuff, they copy it all, they scan it into their system, send the loaded BOL that the shipper retained to the brokerage, right? And really the ultimate goal is to connect that BOL to the receiver, and like looking at the POD versus the BOL when it's shipped. Because if you look at those two documents, 6 months down the road, you're looking at that saying, how did we miss this?
What's important to mention, I might have mentioned earlier, is the alteration of the bill of lading. So when the bill of lading winds up back with the logistics provider, the broker, it's stamped 30 pallets delivered clear with that consignee's stamp. So the bad guys now have a stamp for a multitude of box stores, and it's showing delivered clear. So therein lies one of the bigger problems we have, is the bad guys have figured out how to circumvent this whole thing of I delivered 6, but now I've regenerated the bill of lading. I've stamped it showing 30 pallets delivered. And with a 3D printer, you can reproduce seal numbers. You can reproduce seals and seal numbers. We're not dealing with the same type of criminal that I dealt with back in the 90s and 2000s, and when I left the industry in 2011 of law enforcement. We're dealing with a whole new level of sophistication. And we're moving so fast and so many loads. I understand any type of slowdown in the movement of goods is going to raise the cost of shipping goods and the cost of goods to the consumer. And we're all in that competitive market. The question is how much can the supply chain and the logistics providers, how much can they afford to pay in claims? And how long can the insurance companies stand up for their customers and continue to pay the claims until, these are like these nuclear verdicts we see on liability accidents on the Werner case and some other ones where the insurance companies are going to start drawing that line in the sand by raising deductibles and not covering certain types of thefts, where now what? Now we're all standing around scratching our head. But at the end of the day, what we've got to communicate back to the shipper is, hey, look, this is coming back at you. It's almost like what we had in the grocery industry back in the 90s where nobody would haul grocery freight because of the way the consignees were treating the drivers and the carriers when they would deliver. We're headed to that tipping point again, I think.
So if you look at the modification of the BOLs, are there other examples of current tactics that you're seeing?
Straight up pilferages. And you think, well, it's just a couple hundred boxes stolen off the back of a trailer. That's a big thing. And these guys are getting really bold. So we'll throw some railroad industry into there too. So they jump on the train tracks. This is a tactic on the rail side. So in Needles, there's a switching station, and the bad guys jump on the train in Needles, and all they have to do is cut one airline. It takes that train maybe 20 miles to stop, 30 miles to stop. And when it stops, it usually stops right around the same place. And the bad guys know that they can get to that railroad track line with a U-Haul truck and a couple of other vehicles. And what they'll do there is they'll unload a couple of rail cars, and they already know, I don't know, it's like magic, but they know which ones they want to unload. So they'll unload into, say, the U-Haul or the box truck. They'll meet at a specific place, and they'll split the goods up into passenger cars. And they'll all take different routes back to Southern California. Because if one gets caught, they still got like 10 cars full of electronics or apparel or shoes or whatever. So that's a whole different kind of crew. It's a whole different skill set. So if you look at the sophistication on what we're talking about with the bill of lading manipulation, and you flip it over to what the rail industry is dealing with now, we're not dealing with common street level thugs. This is a whole level of sophistication we've never seen. So a lot of these crimes, though, what we're seeing is the shot callers aren't in the United States. The shot callers are in other countries. Can't get into that on this podcast, but they're in other countries and they're pulling the strings from there. So there's really no one at the high level, the kingpin, to arrest. Because if you're shipping the goods overseas, they become legitimate over there. They're not stolen anymore, and they can be sold in the retail market. So we're dealing with a whole different level of organized crime right now.
Yeah, I think that's important to convey the messaging that it is organized crime, and it is a high level of sophistication. And that messaging, what I feel like is it's important to inform anybody that ships goods in the United States that the reason that all these steps need to be taken and the reason that they need to have very good record keeping and good security systems, cameras, etc., is because we're not just dealing with one truck operation, one driver that had a bad day and decided to go rogue and just take the freight somewhere. We're dealing with a multi-layered, organized attack, basically, on the supply chain.
Again, they're taking advantage of the speed and efficiency that we're moving the goods. One other thing I want to mention is we've got to get better at getting the police to take a report. So I always tell people, look, before you call the police, if you can't figure it out on your own, call me. I'll walk you through the police report. Before I would call 911, I'd look up the state statute for what exactly happened. Don't call up law enforcement and say, yeah, well, we posted a load on the internet. We hired a truck. He gave it to another guy. They got double brokered to another guy. And they did this. And you're going to confuse the most important person in this chain is the uniform officer. Detectives don't do reports. The person that's going to investigate is not going to do the report. That's not how it works in law enforcement. It's the guy that shows up in the beat car or girl shows up in the patrol car. That's the person taking the report. So you've got to be able to explain to them, because we want to get the dots on the map. Because if we're not reporting cargo theft, the local police department, the state, the sheriff, whatever, we don't have a cargo theft problem here. Nobody reports it. Well, they were trying to report it, but we spit this back at them that it's a civil matter and we don't understand it and get some more information. You can't report it because you're not the owner of the goods. The shipper, it's a whole, and I know you've been through this yourself. It's a laundry list. It's a side effects to a bad prescription of why we can't get a police report. Keep it simple. Look up the statute in that state. Look it up. Read the statute out loud to yourself Okay, this is what happened. How am I going to communicate this to the uniform officer? Because we don't want to take any excuses off the table to get that dot on the map and get that report made. Keep it simple. Get the case number, get the report made. Then after you get that case number, then reach out to a detective with that agency, a higher level. We'll do it for you if you're my customer.
And you brought up a good point too, right? Leverage the relationship with CargoNet as well. Get that case number and then get that. So would you recommend, being a CargoNet member, you would recommend you just do the very concise, file it with the local authorities, get that report number, and then get your report created with CargoNet, include that report number?
I would say do both at the same time. While you're waiting for the uniform officer to show up, send us an email, let us know you got a theft, and we're going to get some more information for you. If we get enough information from you on the front end, we can let our law enforcement partners know a load was just stolen. So we can put them on the lookout for it. And then as we get more information, we'll spoon feed that to law enforcement. So we're intuitive. So we kind of know if a load's stolen by the MO, where it's going, who stole it. So we're going to go ahead and start notifying law enforcement. While you're waiting for that law enforcement officer to show up, let us know as well.
Do you see any advancements in the loss mitigation side and key successful recoveries?
A lot of recoveries are going on right now with our partnership with law enforcement. And we've got a lot of these bad actors out there taking the stolen goods to various cross docks, and the cross docks are working with us in law enforcement. Something suspicious comes in, they'll let us or law enforcement know. Next thing you know, you've got a search warrant going on, and you've got the last one. I've got an analyst in California right now helping the FBI. I had to fly him out there, $5 million recovery. They did a document dump, and we're going through all the documents to help the FBI on what does this mean, the rate confirmation, what's the vernacular mean, what's this term mean, those type of things. So we're having a lot of success. One thing I want to mention is one of the biggest opportunities, one of the biggest problems law enforcement has is now getting you to come pick up your stolen goods. And I get it. It's a challenge. It's an uphill battle. You don't have your own trucks. You don't have your own trailers. You got to get a forklift. Whose product is it? Who's on the hook for it? But we're running the well dry with law enforcement with this recovering stolen goods. They're probably going to give you a couple hours to come get it. If you don't come get it, they're going to photograph it and leave it with the bad guy because law enforcement can't. They don't have trucks, trailers, warehouses, and those type of things, nor can they afford to pay for all the overtime to wait for it. You may want to hire a security guard, put a security guard there till you can get your own truck and trailer there to pick up the goods. So again, as I talked earlier about this is a team sport, also a team sport with law enforcement as well. So I would recommend everybody is to have a recovery plan in writing.
When you look at the three kind of big subcategories of all this, right? You've got basically somebody actually stealing the physical asset of the truck and the trailer or stealing the trailer. You've got pilferage, and then you've got this whole concept of fictitious pickup. For people that may not be as familiar with this topic as you and I are, could you walk through what fictitious pickup and how that differs from maybe a double brokering or something like that?
Double brokering, I'm looking up to see how many categories there actually are. 5 different categories of theft that we look at. We look at theft, straight up theft. We look at fictitious pickup. We look at fraud. We look at burglary and theft. And we have broken seals, which a broken seal is typically going to be a criminal attempt to see what's in the trailer. So the difference is double brokering is a common practice. When I was in transportation back in the 70s and 80s, double brokering was the common practice. Everybody did it. When it goes well, nobody complains. But if something in that goes wrong, where you post a load, somebody grabs your load and says, well, I'll just repost it because I can make a couple $100 off the top by reposting it. What changes the math on it is now you have different insurance companies and a different insurance coverage in place. So that may have that requirement where they need $100,000 insurance. You've got it, you booked the load, and the person you broker it with only has $50,000 of insurance, or maybe they don't have any at all. So if the load delivers on time, intact, and with no exceptions, everybody's happy. But when it goes wrong, we all scream, it's double brokering, it's double brokering. Well, when I do it, it's okay, but when you do it, it's not. But what the bad guys have figured out is the double brokering has opened up an opportunity for them for the fictitious pickups. So they can create a false identification, false carrier name. They can steal a carrier's identity, or they can buy another carrier's identity and buy it lock, stock, and barrel, domain names, phone lines, everything. And then they can use the load board, the internet, to commit their crime. And again, we're moving freight so fast, They buy, steal, whatever, a company name that's already registered with you on file. And you go, great, I'm giving it to my best carrier here, or one of my good carriers, my top tier carriers. And you're really giving it to the bad actor. So that's the fictitious pickup where they've stolen it. There's a lot of different buckets and categories the tentacles reach out to in that, but that's typically what that's going to be. The pilferage is where they just follow the truck or just potluck. They're loose-knit groups, as my former boss at the GBI used to say, that are just roaming the truck stops at night with box trucks, or they're strategically following a truck that came from a shipper. What we see is, the whole trailer stolen or the truck and trailer stolen. If they steal the truck and trailer, you're going to find the truck. You're going to find the tractor within a couple of miles of the theft. They're not going to take a chance on using the victim's tractor. They're going to use their own tractor. They're going to sweep the trailer. The sophisticated groups will sweep the trailer with an RF sniffer looking for a GPS unit. And then they have their own methods about how they defeat the GPS unit. Everything we do can be defeated. And then you've got fraud, straight up fraud, where we used to deal a lot with ComCheck scams and towing scams and hostage loads and those type of things, where what we see now is the hostage load from the old days of where maybe you had a disagreement with the carrier. They pick up a load and they want a couple $100 extra. Those days are gone. They're picking up 15 loads and holding them hostage because they bought a company, lock, stock, and barrel. And not only did they buy them, but they bought their receivables, and they go back and see that, well, these were legitimate claims that we were short paid on, but I just don't like the way it was done. It should have been filed with our insurance company. So they're going to pick up, I've had one of them where they picked up 15 loads. They had 2 trucks registered on FMCSA, but they picked up 15 loads in one day for this one particular logistics provider. 15 loads. And as the negotiations carried on for a while, so long that when the logistics provider finally paid, they forgot where they put a lot of them. So it took a while to get them all rescued and delivered. So there's a lot of different ways, but the double brokering, it's all fun and games until something goes wrong, then it's bad. But that's the open door. We open that door for the bad actor to come in and use that tool we use of speed and efficiency to steal loads.
If you're a small carrier with a couple trucks, what are things as a motor carrier that you should be cognizant of to avoid being a pawn in a fictitious pickup?
It starts with everything as it appears to be in the rate confirmation. I'm picking up here and it's going here. It's going from A to B. There's nobody calling me in between A and B saying divert it somewhere here, or go to the truck stop and buy a bill of lading because it's going to be a blind shipment. I would say, as the driver, I would say, we're talking drivers. Hey, I work for XYZ Trucking. Is that who you gave the load to? No, we gave it to ABC Trucking. There's going to be a problem there. May not be illegal. The load may deliver okay, but that's where you get back into the double brokering if you want to eliminate that. From the driver's perspective, the driver holds the key, right? Because if we can get the driver on our side and the driver using the tips and best practices, we can eliminate a lot of cargo theft. And that goes from the fictitious pickups, the bill lading alteration, to blind shipments, to cross-dock. If somebody's telling the driver, hey, you're going to take it to the cross-dock instead of delivering it to Chicago, that driver's going to be a party to the crime. They need to understand that they actually could face criminal charges. The bill of lading is a legal document. It's a legal binding document. Back in my dad's day, you could take a bill of lading to the bank and borrow money against it. And a bill of lading can't be altered or manipulated. So they need to understand that what a bill of lading means. It's not just a piece of paper. There's consequences. There's civil and criminal consequences on altering a bill of lading. It's forgery. That's a crime. Let them know that when they do that alteration, they're part of the criminal operation, and a reasonable person, and this is how you have to explain it to a driver, because all laws are based on the reasonable man doctrine, a reasonable person should or should have known. And if you can get a driver to understand this, what I'm just telling you, should or should have known that you're involved in a criminal operation now, and you could be criminally charged, you'll get their attention. Truck drivers are very good people. They generally want to do the right thing. They want to be known as professionals, and they don't want to be part of these type of crimes, but they're being used as pawns. On the surface transportation side, the simple things, put a lock on both doors. You can open the left door without opening the right door. A lot of people don't know that. We see a seal on the right door of the trailer going down the road. That means nothing to a bad guy because the left door will open. There's no overlap. It's just a rubber seal that keeps the left door. Locks on both doors, a seal on both doors. Simple things. Back up to another truck at the truck stop. Use the environment to harden the target. A lot of truck stops, it backs up to the interstate. There's a steep berm behind the parking lot. Use that. At the truck stop here and where I am, it's a 30-foot drop. If you want to get to the trailer off the interstate, it's 30 feet up. You're not going to break into that trailer. And don't leave your truck unattended. And double lock it. They make glad hand locks that go on the dash of the truck that will lock the glad hands, keep them from releasing. There's all kinds of tools and technology out there that we can harden a target. If we spend a few dollars and take some of these tips that I just gave you, we could really make a significant dent in supply chain theft.
It's leveraging the shipping facilities, and it's leveraging the truck driver awareness and education, right? There's been big movements that where truck drivers have helped call things out in the industry that they're seeing. And I think this is one of them, right? That's just making it easy for them to report and equipping them with the tools and the knowledge to know when something is up. And I think to your point too, right? Understanding that delivering freight to the unintended location means that you're party in this.
You've been on shipping docks and gone in break rooms in your career as I have. You walk in the break room or the shipping room or wherever the drivers or the forklift drivers hang out, and there's all these safety posters up everywhere. The walls are plastered with 330 days without a lost time accident. Put the brake on before you get off the forklift. We need the same type of signage and same type of tips where the drivers pick up the load. There should be some signs in there, some tips for the driver. It's a team sport. The shipper's got to get on board here. The shipper has some signs up in there. Hey, if somebody tells you the load's not going where it says on the bill of lading, let us know. There's a problem. Some signage for the drivers. The drivers go in there and they're bored. So they read these things. They're probably tired of reading safety ones. We need to have some security signs up.
Is there any wins or success, humble brags, Keith Lewis, great stories or anything like that you want to include in this?
Well, I'm a pretty humble guy, but my team does a great job. I'll brag about my team. Like I said earlier on the call, we've probably recovered $30 million just this year alone. I've got great analysts that are just nonstop looking up items that nobody even knows they're stolen. Law enforcement will hit a cross dock and give us a call. My team will catch things. We caught one the other day where logistics was spelled wrong in a scam. We caught it, prevented a load from being picked up. We're very humble here. Our focus is prevention, recovery. If we ever want to get into some of the old stories from my old days, we can talk about those sometime maybe. But I'm not out there working it anymore. It's my team. My team is doing a fabulous job.
Keith, thank you for the time, for your knowledge and your perspective on this topic as we continue to try to essentially spread awareness and hopefully connect with truck drivers, with shippers, anybody, again, involved in the supply chain that has a role to play in this. Going to continue down this path to try to spread awareness and try to give best practices and tips and keep them up to date on any current trends that we're seeing. So appreciate your time, Keith.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's an honor to be considered for this.
And that's a wrap for More Than a Broker. You heard firsthand accounts from industry experts and Spot's hardworking individuals, revealing a culture of collaboration and innovation. For more information about Spot, our service offerings, our people and culture, our job postings, and more, check us out online at spotinc.com. That is spotinc.com. Thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. Until next time, keep striving to be more than a broker.